What is up, Sunday fams? Welcome back to another video. This week we are covering Mouse. Lee Seung Gi is back.
This show is about Chadalgun. This is a very strange and suspenseful and mysterious show, and quite dark.
It's dark, it's serious, it's really heinous.
Yes.
You know, it starts off with some grisly murders, psychopathic killers, serial killers to be exact. And the biggest question and the biggest themes that the show is asking is that if you were born with a psychopathic gene, or if an unborn child has a psychopathic gene, what would you do?
Yeah, and so this is a very controversial and a very taboo subject because, you know, a lot of studies have been done throughout the scientific community about thought crimes and whether or not people could be held accountable for something they have thought about doing or haven't done yet. And so, like, the general premise is usually, would you stop a certain genocidal maniac before they actually do the thing? Would you get rid of them, like, as they're a child, you know?
I mean, in hindsight, you would say yes, like just going back in history just to prevent the most catastrophic things to have happened in our history. But if you were a parent and if you knew your child was carrying this gene, what would you do? That is a very difficult question to answer.
Absolutely. And when you're watching this show, obviously there's only 2 episodes available right now, but as you're watching this show, you have to start to think, like, at least in my case, the crux of this show is trying to prove that premise wrong, right? Not everybody is beholden to their genes. Some of it is their upbringing and some of it is their environment and who they're surrounded with, who they associate with. They lay a lot of groundwork in the first episode to kind of make you think that at least in this fictional universe or this fictional story, that this gene does exist and that whoever has this gene is in fact psychopathic.
And if you're confused like I was, Element was telling me the whole time, it's like, who is this kid? This kid has to be Lee Seung Gi, and then this other kid 5 years later, 10 years later, who happens to be a little bit older, has to be this other guy. But it's really set up to the headhunter himself, Han So-jun.
The show goes through a lot of time jumps, 5 years later, 5 years later, 15 years later. So it is quite confusing as you start to watch it. So now fast forward to 15, 10 years later, we're with Lee Seung Gi, who is Jung Ba-rum, and Go Mu-chi, who are respectively an officer and a detective. And there was this initial confusion as to who they were, but Go Mu-chi is, given his history with Han So-jun, seems to be the younger child of the victim of the headhunter.
Yeah, he was trapped inside this suitcase inside the camper, and he was a survivor. He was the one who actually scratched or sliced Han So-jun's face in the cheek, and he has grown up to be a detective and, you know, in pursuit of justice and in pursuit of his own vengeance. And so we actually know, like, that's for sure that's him,
Yes.
right? But Lee Seung Gi, we're not quite sure yet, because enter in a doctor in the scene who happens to be like a skilled surgeon who kind of has like this really cold eyes, like psychopathic eyes, right? Like, so earlier in the first episode, we were like trying to connect the dots, right? It's like, so there was Han So-jun's wife whose baby or unborn baby had the psychopathic gene, and she meets another mother who happens to have the same gene with her unborn child. And so we're trying to connect these two things together, and it's like, oh, each of them is one of the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking throughout this whole entire thing that the crux of this show obviously is to disprove the initial premise. Your fate is relegated to the genes that were within you from birth. But, you know, looking at the ending scene or the last frame of episode 2, you kind of start to picture that this Sung Yo-han is the headhunter's son, and Jung Ba-rum is, in fact, his brother from another mother.
Maybe. Yeah. We don't know. We don't quite know that yet, but there's some kind of connection. There were 2 mothers in the first 2 episodes who had unborn psychopathic children, and so I'm just guessing that those are the 2 people that we see at the last scene of episode 2. Like, on top of all of this, there's this murder crime mystery, like a psychopathic killer that's also on the loose. There's a connection between the headhunter and this psychopathic killer, and we don't know who that is, really. It could be any of the characters that we've met in the past 2 episodes, but there is a connection to the headhunter's past, because the headhunter in the past had this relationship with God or just the church in general, and this in the present day, this psychopathic killer is also having like his go against the church as well.
Now I'm thinking after watching the first 2 episodes that this current serial killer that they are trying to catch is neither Sung Yo-han or Jung Barum. I think Sung Yo-han and Jung Barum are the exceptions to the rule. They're both the children of psychopathic genes, right? But they're not the killers, right? They're obviously misdirects, and Jung obviously he doesn't seem like the guy, like, especially if you're going off of the premise that they are setting up in episode 1 where they're heartless, they're emotionless, the kid is just like, you know, this cold killer. And then we look at Jung, and even though Sung Yo-han, the doctor that we meet, is somewhat of the same disposition, I don't think that they're going to, at least in episode 2, right away say, hey, that's the killer. I think they're both in the crosshairs, so to speak, narratively, but they aren't the culprit that they're looking for.
Yeah, it would be too good to be true. It's just right there, and then the show is over. Like,
Yes.
you figured everything out, so it can't be that. But the one thing that keeps sticking out in my mind is the doctor, Sung Yoo-han. He seems to be displaying the coldness of a psychopathic killer,
Yes.
right? No empathy in his eyes, very cold. He was in that room in the hospital. It was like, next time if you want to kill yourself, just like do this, do that, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah,
I was just like,
I mean,
whoa, okay.
that could just be the lack of bedside manner, but of course we still don't know if he's actually, see, I don't think he's the killer, and I don't think
either.
I think he's just, I think this gene at the end of the day just kind of has something to do with your disposition in life. If you are this Sung Yo-han and you are this person who is just lacking in empathy and just lacking in bedside manner, and you're just like, if you really want to do this, you do this, and this is how you do it. But I don't think he had any kind of ill.
Maybe he's just matter of fact and very blunt about everything.
Absolutely.
One thing is for sure is that you won't be seeing any middle fingers being shown in this show because it's blurred out, or anything that's too gruesome or too grisly. Like, I don't understand. I've seen some pretty heavy rated shows on Viki, and I don't know if this was just taken in from broadcast in South Korea, and then, you know, this is how we're watching it. But, you know, if you're expecting anything grisly or even a middle finger, you're not going to see it. It'll be blurred out.
The mystery is definitely there. It's intrigued me, and I definitely want to stick with this series and see how it all plays out. I really want to know, is Cha Dal-gun a psychopathic killer?
Yeah, we'd love to know if what do you think? Like, leave it in the comment section below. We should really start calling him by his name, Jung Barum, and the doctor. I can't remember names, but anyway, like, you should let us know who you think is the killer. Like, what's the relationship between those two in the comment section below.
In any case, that'll do it for our first impressions of Mouse. Leave it in the comment section down below who you think everyone is. Have you solved the case already? And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe for more videos, turn on the bell notification so you know when we post new videos. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.